About 1 in 5 of you watching this video would not exist if it were not for an office romance. And I am one of those people. My parents met at work in 1989, back when nearly a quarter of all new couples formed at the office. For decades, meeting through work was not fringe or taboo. It was completely ordinary, maybe even expected. It was the second most common way for new couples to meet, just behind friends of friends. Workplaces are where adults spend most of their waking lives. It's where people get to observe one another over time, where attraction grows slowly, not through a swipe like today, but through proximity and familiarity. Now, in 2026, the idea of an office romance doesn't just seem unlikely for most. It feels almost dangerous and taboo. Somewhere along the way, things have really changed. The office romance went from being a cornerstone of family formation to an HR nightmare, complete with mandatory disclosures and even love contracts. In many ways, these changes were well-intentioned, but the real question is, what have we lost in the process? And what does this mean for modern men navigating dating today? For most of modern history, the workplace functioned as more than somewhere you go to earn a salary. It's a social ecosystem. You get to know people very well because you see how they act under pressure. You see how they treat their colleagues. You see how they handle responsibility, conflict, success, and failure. And for romantic attraction, especially female to male attraction, that context matters enormously. Today, we're told that work and romance should be kept strictly separate. And we've done our best to convince ourselves that desire is something that can be switched off between the hours of 9 and 5. Now, on paper, that sounds good, especially for your boss. But in reality, it has quietly erased one of the most important environments where men and women got to know each other as complete human beings. This erosion happened on two fronts. First, it was cultural. The aftermath of the MeToo era reshaped workplace norms in ways which were, in many respects, necessary. There were clearer boundaries that needed to be drawn. Abusive behavior needed consequences, and these power imbalances needed to be acknowledged. But along these changes came something else. Not a sense of safety, but actually a pervasive sense of fear. Not that men were afraid of doing wrong, they knew that they wouldn't, but they were afraid that their actions would be misinterpreted. For some men, rather than try and figure out how to initiate romance respectfully, they've decided it's better just to not initiate romance at all. Being romantically interested in a female colleague is something men will try to suppress, ignore, and deny. In some companies, office romances have become explicitly discouraged. In others, formally banned. And even where it is technically allowed, it's still a liability to your job and your career. And for men whose livelihoods are at stake here, that risk aversion means they've just opted out. The second big blow to the office romance was, of course, remote work. Work from home didn't just change where we work, it changed who we see and our relationships with them. It changed the depth of our relationships with our co-workers. Entire generations of young professionals now spend their professional lives working from a kitchen table, from their bedrooms, or from a coffee shop with their headphones on. There's no after-work drinks. There's no casual conversation by the printer. There is no ability for that slow accumulation of familiarity and connection. Work has become very transactional and compartmentalized in our lives. And although this has its benefits for work-life balance, it has dire social consequences. To understand how this affects men so much, you have to understand something fundamental about how attraction works differently for men and women. Men are typically attracted to women visually, and often they are attracted immediately. Women, far more often, however, are more attracted to the character of a man, and that can only be revealed over time. A man becomes attractive not just because of how he looks, but because of how he carries responsibility, how he solves problems, how he treats others, how he handles pressure. The workplace was one of the few environments where all of these things were visible and a woman got to see a man in his element. Now, most couples are meeting on dating apps, which give you absolutely no opportunity to share your character beyond a few photos and a bio. The slow burn of attraction is almost impossible. So it's not surprising we are seeing more single men than ever before, especially under 30. There's less sex, there are fewer relationships forming, and there's more frustration from both sides of the dating market. Now, while getting too cozy at the after-work drinks and sleeping with your co-workers was probably not a good idea, I do question whether we've begun to overcompensate, because there's a statistic that I find very revealing, which is that 89% of Americans report having had a crush on a coworker at some point in their lives. Now, this doesn't mean that they acted on it, but this number alone tells you something very important. Attraction in these shared environments like an office is normal, it's human, it's inevitable. And yet today, that attraction is often accompanied not by excitement, but by anxiety. It's accompanied by fear. We worry that even acknowledging this attraction might be dangerous. We've created a culture where desire is assumed to be predatory until proven otherwise, and where the safest option for a man is to emotionally withdraw. So where does this leave the modern gentleman? The answer is not to pine nostalgically for the Mad Men era of excess. It's also not to pretend that boundaries don't matter. The office is not the place to be a playboy. It's not a place to serially pursue women. It's not a place for ambiguity, pressure, or entitlement. But it also doesn't need to be a place where attraction and romance is treated as a kind of contamination. What matters is your intent and your conduct. If what you're seeking is a short-term hookup, an ego boost, a casual fling, then no. The workplace is not worth the risk. But if you find somebody genuinely special, somebody you admire, you respect, somebody you can imagine building something serious with, then it may be worth learning how to navigate that interest properly. Whenever you're romantically interested in somebody who is in a close, ongoing proximity, whether that's an office, an apartment building, or even just a gym that you go to, there's always an element of risk. You are, as the phrase goes, shitting where you eat. And I've shat where I eat more than one time. And I will tell you this, in the age where ghosting and disposability is normalized, there is actually something quietly civilized about these environments where your behavior has consequences, where you treat people well, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because you will see them again. And even if things don't continue romantically, things will still continue professionally or on a more platonic basis. Even if the relationship doesn't work out, you should be able to look back and be proud of how you carried yourself. And if you can do that, then you really have nothing to fear. That thought alone, that intention, will filter out most bad behavior among men. Men behave badly when there are no consequences to their actions. So what does expressing genuine interest actually look like in a modern workplace? It looks like gauging interest gradually rather than forcing a moment. It happens more slowly than it would on an app or at a bar. An expression of interest should be made clearly, but just made once. Don't make a series of advances or pressure her over time. And crucially, learn how to honestly and respectfully accept a no. A no that you can take calmly and gracefully, without resentment, without awkwardness. That is one of the strongest signals of character that a modern gentleman can display. And often, paradoxically, it's the one that leaves the door open for future opportunities rather than slamming it shut. Of course, many men will never face these dilemmas because they actually don't work in offices anymore. Remote work has not only removed the risk of an office romance, but it's removed the opportunity as well. And for men who work entirely from home or for themselves online, meeting women organically now requires way more effort and intentionality. You cannot rely on the accidental proximity to build attraction. So you need to build a life in shared environments again. Third spaces, if you will. That might mean sport clubs, language classes, gyms, run clubs, dinner parties, cultural events, members clubs. I mean, that's why we have our own members club for the Gentleman's Collective. It's so you can meet like-minded men. Now, you won't find any dates on there, But the point is that you don't go to these places with the specific aim of meeting women, of hunting for dates or getting numbers. You go there to be somebody who is familiar and connected. Attraction still requires environments in which it can grow. What's changed is that now those environments must be sought out deliberately. The broader question beneath all of this isn't really about office romance. It's about whether modern life has become so sanitized, so anxious, so risk-adverse that we've forgotten how intimacy actually forms. Romance often emerges slowly, awkwardly, often inconveniently, in shared places over time. When we eliminate those spaces in the name of safety and productivity, we don't just remove the risks, we remove the possibilities. And it's in those possibilities where the most meaningful relationships can begin. Office romances may never return to their former place in our culture, but if we want men and women to meet each other as more than just profiles and swipes, we need to rebuild those environments in which attraction can unfold naturally again, carefully, respectfully, but without fear, without anxiety. Because a society that makes intimacy near impossible shouldn't be surprised when people struggle to find it.